Okay, I'd like to address some controversy that has transpired of recent from my comments about the Inclusive Bean, which is a new coffee shop opening up in Racine. Unfortunately, there have been some misunderstandings by people who maybe in my writings just being able to communicate clearly what it is that I'm objecting to. So I'm going to put that to rest here in this commentary video. Hopefully there aren't going to be any more needed, but I will, of course, make more if necessary to explain and hopefully guide some people in our community who are on the fence about understanding what we're dealing with here in why is it in a world in which we live that is being hogtied into wokeness, why it's important to be on high alert and then make sure that when something is or isn't woke, that there's clear delineations between what is problematic. So I'm going to point this out. Here's what where I'm coming from. I have no problem whatsoever with anybody, any business on its face, serving the needy, serving the poor. I've worked in organizations like that, nonprofit and for-profit. I love the idea. I've patroned the Inspired store in the downtown Lake Geneva area, which is a Christian-run coffee shop that and cafe that actually helps employ people with disabilities. It's a wonderful, wonderful ministry that they're doing. And that obviously is one of the ministries that has gone, if you will, unchecked, undone as the church, where we have not engaged the poor, the needy, as well as we should have, I would say especially in Protestant circles. And that's something that I would applaud on its face if that was what it was for, right? If that was purely the reason, because we agree in the gospel that because everyone's made in the image of Christ, therefore they have absolute ability and necessity to function as a meaningful person in our community and be able to enjoy the things in our community. So that upfront said, when there is questions as to the motivation behind doing any form of nonprofit, any form of philanthropy, you have to ask the question, what do they believe behind the scenes? Okay. So, and of course, the way in which those things reveal themselves to you, you're given clues, right? The clues are the language they use, obviously the business practices they end up doing or purporting to do and then not doing, right? The associations that they network with, and of course, the actual belief system of the individuals who run the place, right? And so this is any organization, right, has to be evaluated on what they believe, not just the actions that they do. Obviously, an organization, hypothetically, not saying anything about this, hypothetically, an organization that is a Nazi organization claiming to be for, let's say, whatever proper civil thing. Hey, we want better roads. Hey, we see some issues going on over here. Hey, we just want people to reproduce in a great way. Imagine some horrendous organization choosing to think about doing things in our community that way. And when you criticize them, they just say, oh, well, we're doing all these good things. Yes, you can do good things and have bad motives. That's the point here. And the question is not necessarily bad motives, but bad ideology, right? And bad theology, bad ideology. So when those things reveal themselves to you, they do not come by saying, hey, we've got bad ideology. They come by saying things that sound good. So that being said, anytime we're engaging with any organization, we should be always engaging our minds and thinking about the values in which we claim and the values in which the organization claims and then therefore then goes and practices. And there might be a disconnect, not only from what they claim, but what they practice. Okay. And that's why we should be vigilant on evaluating that. Now, coming into this issue here, what we are seeing in the culture is this has been happening left, right, and center here, where we have been seeing organizations that have deliberately been choosing to wokeify their business practices, right? This has been happening for quite some time now, in the last 5 to 6 to 7 years, where we are getting into a place where the Marxist ideology that has been taking shape in our culture has now infiltrated our companies, particularly through the HR departments, but now from a lot of, unfortunately, the CEOs our institutions have wokeified. And what does that mean? They've embraced cultural Marxism. If you don't know what that is, you need to do your homework. You need to figure out what that is. I can give you a whole link of things, which maybe I'll comment right below here, which explains the theology of Marxism and how it manifests itself and how it seems like it's a good thing. And it tries to say it's doing good, but it doesn't. Now, it is setting itself up against the very nature of God. Now, what we are evaluating here is a new business woke? And that's the question. So what are the ways in which woke manifests itself? Well, language is one of the primary territories that leftists use to not only play games, but to manipulate the people around them. And language has been the core thing in which woke has been trying to switch definitions on you and claim you're racist by the definition. But the same applies back on them. When they use their terms for their ideology, we can then point out, by the way, that's cultural Marxism. Even if they don't want to embrace the label, they know what they're doing. Okay? When you embrace the worldview of woke, you may not recognize the labels or you may not like the labels. But regardless, when your worldview, the actions in which you are taking out matches, that could be the problem, right? Well, how does that manifest? It first manifests in language. The words you use so you go onto someone's website and you see that they have a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. You now know they have embraced Marxism, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is the holy trinity of the new religion of cultural Marxism through leftist ideology. If you don't know about that, I encourage you to go listen to James Lindsay. I encourage you to listen to I will link back to a whole list of videos to educate yourself on what that means. Language is the primary landscape in which we first see wokeism happening. Okay? The language you use it matters, okay? And it matters to tell you very quickly where they stand or the circles in which they are leaning. Now, that is why when I saw this come out, the first place I saw this was in a business magazine explaining that this is going to be a thing. I was concerned. This immediately screamed woke. Because inclusivity, inclusiveness, is a buzzword used by Marxists, or not even those who don't accept the label but are Marxist, to push ideology that is contrary, that is not actually a biblical value. It purports itself to be that, but it actually isn't. So it will have surface level analogies that will be consistent with biblical values. Of course, the initial concept, just purely in a hypothetical theoretical construct of the word inclusive, means to include, right? Well, what's the problem with that? We're in America, aren't we supposed to include people? Yes, of course. We are to include people. The question is not that we shouldn't include people. And the question is not that, what does it mean? That there are people who have been excluded for one reason or another that aren't necessarily inherently a problem. It's just a functional reason why, unfortunately, they've been excluded from engaging with society, and the practical reason, when properly done in a proper system, can bring those people into engagement with society. None of that is a problem. The problem is the ideology behind the movements that are claiming to be the movers and shakers of the quote-unquote inclusive movement, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are not what they say they are. They are using, if you will, human shields of good works to perpetuate false ideology that breaks down society. If you don't know that, go do your research. I'm going to put it in the links below. This is really important for you to understand. Now, coming on to evaluate directly on the inclusive being. Do I know for certain that the inclusive being is woke? No. I did not say that I know for certain in anywhere I've written. But what I have said is that how this manifests, number one, is to be aware, to be highly suspicious of when anyone uses the terms, because that's the landscape that the left uses to push their ideology, is first and foremost done through language. That's why there's censorship. That is the primary reaction of the left when someone doesn't, when someone isn't inclusive, is they censor you. Now, I haven't been censored, but this is one of the things that is a question that I have. It should be a question we all have. We all have to ask the question, what does it mean? What are they intending to mean? And I am going to be very suspicious, as in I am going to say, this is a red flag. To me, literally a red flag in the sense of communist idea, all right? Not taking care of people who have disabilities. That has historically been a part of the church until modern day. The idea of inclusivity in our culture, in our context today, is not a biblical construct. And if the name fits the ideology behind some of their happy practices, their good practices, which is actually helping people who are in need, the ideology is the problem, not the people, ever the people. Even the people who hold the ideology, it's not even those people necessarily, it's what they believe, right? That's what we're targeting here. I'm not saying anything about anybody who has special needs. I'm not saying anything that anybody who wants to have their a business that is a value-based business. That's what I'm for. But what I'm for specifically is value-based businesses that accord to biblical ethics, and inclusivity, diversity, equity, and inclusion in a Marxist framework does not. See the links below. Now, what I said in my presentation was that, first and foremost, regardless of claimed intentions, it doesn't matter who claims the intentions. Okay? Do not just read that whoever claims good intentions, therefore, has good intentions. That is not the case. And if you are that ignorant, you will be taken advantage of and you will be deceived. Plenty of people claim well-meaning things, but actually don't believe things that are well-meaning. So, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Regardless of claimed good intentions, unless you want to live in a woke city, be highly, what? Suspect. Does that mean conclude? Not necessarily. Highly suspect. Highly suspect. Here, I'm going to highlight it for you. Highly suspect of patroning businesses that what? That use Marxist ideas and language in their organization. Why? Because it is the primary territory that Marxists use to accomplish their fleecing the American public. And they have done it successfully in the church. And that is why I'm pointing this out. If you want to use the word inclusive, you better be really upfront fast that you don't actually mean it the way the left means it. Otherwise, you are actually participating in it, and people will participate because they believe in that value. You are signaling, virtue signaling. This is a virtue signal that you believe something. And to say that it's otherwise is ignorant, and you will be taken captive by false ideology. Okay? It is absolutely a sign that we should ask a question, what is going on here? Now, from my study and my experience, the people who use this language in any context, not in a purely academic context, like let's say equity as a business construct for when it comes to money. No, that's a different term. But when you're referencing something about social good, those are technically socialism constructs or Marxist constructs. Okay, it's very important to know the language of the people who are trying to push this agenda. This is a huge red flag. So be highly suspect of this. Now, further on, I give my reasons, and people really don't like the idea. They immediately took offense that how dare you, because they're just trying to give my son or my relative who has special needs a job. Great. Goodwill's already trying that. Now I've just recently learned Goodwill is woke. That's going to be a problem for me. Organizations have done that without having been woke in the past. The church used to do this without having been woke. The question is, are they woke? And that's what I want to find out, number one. But number two, from my experience, the likelihood that they are woke, for me, my opinion, my observation, my experience, my study, is that almost 95% of the time they're woke. Actually, from my experience, is even higher than that. So this is why I came out using my free speech to say, hey, regardless of whatever anybody's trying to do that sounds great, remember, there are people who are going to use good things to do things that are ultimately against the nature of God. In the end. Okay? People can't stand that idea. They think, how dare I? Well, I'm sorry. Be aware that this is actually happening. This will happen, especially as we near the time in which we are in right now. Okay? Whether it's the end times or whether right now we're talking about what's happening at scale in a Marxist world, this is what's happening. All right? Now, here's some criteria that I'm using to then say, how do I know why am I projecting this idea that they're already fully woke? I'm actually not saying they're fully woke. Here's the three potential explanations for why I'm saying inclusivity is immediate red flag that says there's a problem. All right. So here's what I've been sharing with people. Number one, they have remained. Here's the possible alternatives. Someone who uses the word diversity, equity, and inclusion, one of those words, and doesn't actually understand or doesn't mean what the Marxists say it is, they're willfully ignorant of the cultural and political matters. Okay? They're ignorant. And why do I say willful? Unless you've deliberately done this and you've not read anything by anybody in church circles, and you've not read any articles when it comes to what's been happening in 2020, and you've completely bottled yourself off from the rest of society, is the only possible way that you didn't know that these Marxists are marching around here, literally trying to fire people for whatever they claim is uninclusive, right? They want to fire people for claiming to use language they don't like, that isn't unprofessional language, purely just regular, normal things that are being said, right? And being said, like Gina Carano being fired from her role in The Mandalorian and Disney's Star Wars, that she got fired for using completely regular political speech on her own personal social platform from her company. Why? Because their company doesn't like it. The ethics, because their company is woke. Okay? There are a whole bunch of things that are unless you are unaware, and that's why I don't even like to say that number one's an even possibility, because in this world we live in, there's literally no way you've literally come out of a cave and you've literally just gone into business. There's no way you don't already know inclusivity is a problematic word in conservative circles, number one, but you should already know that it's theologically problematic. If you don't know that, it's because you're where your church is. And that's point two. Okay. Anybody who uses the word diversity, equity, and inclusion in today's world has then either they're really ignorant, which I don't like even saying because it sounds like that is really unbelievable. Okay. Second, you drink the Kool-Aid of culture, which means you've been around it. It's in your companies. It's in the media you use. And you've not decided to engage to determine whether or not these constructs are good or not. You've just used it because everyone else is using it. Okay? That's still by ignorance in one sense, but you're using it because everyone else is using it. Okay? So number one is you're using it because you had no idea. Number two is you're using it because everyone else is using it. And it's just the way we talk about things now. Right? That's also a position of ignorance, but not from blindness. Just from, well, I don't know, everyone was just, this is what we call this thing. Okay? Okay. Still problematic, because you're still perpetuating Marxism. 3, you actually believe the tenets of cultural Marxism and don't embrace, even if you don't decide to keep the label. The belief system you agree with, even if you don't agree with the top level category of Marxist, you agree with all the tenets of or many of the core tenets of Marxism. Okay, that's number 3. And in my experience, when someone uses a very forward-facing term like this, they know exactly why they're using it. And that is not my experience only. That is not only my research from listening to actual people who have studied this at depth, at academic level depth, like James Lindsay, like Jordan Peterson, the people who are experts in understanding this, but then my own personal study. This is the truth. And the reality is, if you're in one of these 3 camps, here's what I would recommend. Number 1, if you're willfully ignorant, get educated. Because what you are doing is you are signaling to Marxists to patron your company. And not only that, but you are signaling to people who are unaware of this term now that it's just not, you're perpetuating basically number 2. You're adding to more people who just think it's a normal term. And today's world is not a normal term. It is a term for cultural Marxists. And it is a term that is used very deliberately by them. Okay? 3, if you are in that, or if you are in these 2 situations where you're completely blind to anything and just used it because it was in the dictionary, or 2, you used it because everyone else is using it, then you need to educate yourself and you need to change your name. That would be my recommendation. You don't want to do that? Fine. Then be really, really clear of what you mean in all of your media by inclusive. And you're going to have to differentiate the difference between the Marxist idea of inclusion and your redeemed, let's say, idea of inclusion. But either way, anybody, because we don't know at this point, it is important that red flags and red sirens be placed right now in the people's minds who, when they see these terms perpetuated in their companies. That includes, unfortunately, this business, until they differentiate themselves from cultural Marxists. They are actually using a very deliberate word. And if they don't believe that, then they need to differentiate themselves from it. And if they don't, then that's a question. The question is, well, why wouldn't they? Well, okay. Now you've got another question to answer. Well, they're using the term, but they're not going to change the term, even though they claim that they don't agree with it. So, but then they're not going to put anything out. They're not going to start discussing a different way of thinking. Because this is obviously a value-based company. This is a company that's deciding to use this term on some value. The question I'm asking is, what value is that? Where is that value coming from, and what is that value germane? Where does it belong, in what category? It's either in Marxist category, or it's in, let's say, classical liberal category, which today is almost non-existent because it's been sucked into the left. The left has sucked up everything. Or it's in the redeeming territory, where we're trying to pull back a term that the left has used. But unless you get proactive about that, people are just going to assume you're Marxist, and rightly so. If you're conservative, you should be doing that, or a Christian. Here's why. Satan can use good things like helping the poor and the needy to slip his lies and dismantle biblical order. That's how Satan works. He does not work by saying, oh, I'm trying to destroy things. He works by saying, oh, all I'm just trying to do is trying to help. I'm just trying to make your life easier. That's what Satan does. Again, he can use opportunities for good things. Is it a good thing? Is it a morally praiseworthy thing? Is it a biblical thing to help the needy? Yes, gleaning is a principle. And in my opinion, that should have been the name of the business. The gleaned bean. Because that's the biblical principle of gleaning, is to leave your overflow of works, of fruit from the field for people who are poor or in a mental or physical deformity. It's to help the needy. The gleaning, right? That is a biblical construct. That's not the idea being communicated here. It's using a culturally relevant term, which is also a cultural Marxist term. That's questionable, and it should be. Okay? Now, Satan's using this, make no mistake. He has really used this well to completely destroy our ability. PayPal, if they find out that PayPal finds out you're a conservative, they will take your money. They already have. Okay, there are plenty of organizations who have gone woke and find out you're a conservative, and they see you as uninclusive, undiverse, or whatever, and therefore you're automatically, they're going to pull your money. Okay, well, there you go. We have to be aware that this is the world in which we live. We're not living in 1980s where you could use the word inclusive and it didn't matter. We are living in a modern world. If you use the word inclusive, we got to ask some questions. And I'm asking questions. But I'm also fairly aware that the people from my background, from my being able to study these things, 95 or more or greater percent of the time, they actually believe the tenets without actually wanting to say the word Marxism. So now we're here. Whatever it is, woke coffee, woke businesses, woke organizations, woke music, unintentional or intentional, are going to have a problem, going to have an effect on the cultural conscious. No matter how sweet or innocent or pure the people who are handing it to you or delivering it to you are. So if someone slides a woke cup of coffee, meaning woke, that's the ideology behind why they're doing what they're doing, even if it's a good cup of coffee, even if the people handing it to you are wonderful, happy, beautiful people that don't believe the same things, the organization behind it is meaning to use these as an opportunity to leverage to their advantage. I don't know if this is that company, but we need to be aware that this is how Satan works. This is why we're in the world we're in. Because conservatives have blinded their eyes and said, how dare you question that someone might be doing a good thing for bad reasons? Just how dare you? Well, that's why we're in the state we're in. Okay? We should not want woke or woke-friendly organizations to thrive in our cities. It's that simple. If you're a conservative or a Christian, it should be that simple. It is set wokeness. Check the comments below in the resources I'm going to give you. Wokeness is set up against the nature of God and should be exposed and refuted and not patroned. If I had a kid who has special needs, or if I had a friend of a kid who has special needs, and they were thinking about sending their kid to go work for their young adult or whoever they are, to go work for an organization that's woke, that claims to be about the needs of their needs, I'd say don't do that, man. That's bait. That's bait. They want you to do that. They're using that as an opportunity. And it's because they believe a certain way of being. Well, Christians should not patron woke places. It's setting itself up against the nature of God, even if they claim or do good things beyond the woke. Okay? That's why I'm here. That's why I'm saying this. It's not out of a need to defame anyone. There's no defaming here. This is saying this is a problem. If they're not woke, they should change the name. Or if they want to keep the name, but they don't want to be known as woke, they need to make this as a large part of their marketing brand to explain what the inclusion actually should mean. Or if they're Christians, what it should mean from a biblical perspective if they want to redeem the name. And be very clear. Otherwise, they should be considered allies of the woke. And until proven otherwise, because that's what we're seeing. You use the language of the woke, the likelihood is you're probably woke. And if you're a conservative, you should question that. You should not just blindly participate. Okay? Now, I'd be happy to hear that they are not. And that they're one of the two first things. They're either they had no idea, or, this is just the words everybody's using, and we don't want to perpetuate the idea of Marxism. We believe in a Christian worldview, and we believe that people should, of all different experiences, should be respected because they're made in the image of God. Great. Then be very clear about that. I'd recommend changing your name. You don't want to change the name? Be very clear about that and get out there. Because right now, conservatives should not be patroning this, because there are lots of people who want to say the good things to get your business, but they actually don't believe the same things. Target. Hello, Target. What do you think Target's been doing? Same thing. Okay. This is why I've addressed this. Now, you can disagree. You can find yourself, I think the guy's cracked. I think he's making a mountain out of a molehill. We're not in 1980. That's all I'm going to say to you. We're not in 1980. You need to wake up. This is the world in which we live. You need to be aware. And if things turn out where this company isn't woke, I'm so happy about that. I don't want woke in our cities or in our businesses. But I recommend they change the name or make it very clear that they're not woke. That's all I have to say right now. I'm going to leave links in the comments that will help you understand from a biblical perspective, if you've not really investigated cultural Marxism and how it is opposed to God's order and design, both from a revealed standpoint from the scriptures and from a natural law perspective, which I'll quote secular people to also give you an idea that they all understand this as well. Be engaged, be aware, and don't fall for the lies. Be vigilant and aware that the enemy prowls around like a prying lion, and he loves to be wolf looking like a sheep. Keep your eyes open. All right. Darkness only grows when light recedes. I'll see you next time.